We're backstage with the one and only Robert Plant of Led Zeppelin, and this is indeed an honor for me, Robert. It's so nice to finally meet you.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you kneeling at the foot of my bed.
Oh, I could just stay here forever, but let's get on to... we get into this line, and we'll never finish talking about it. One of the things that I thought about, I know that you and Bonham, John Bonham, whom you call Bonzo, were friends as children. What kind of kids were you?
Well, we're still children. When we were children of the first degree, we first made contact when we were about 15 years old, playing around the same town. I considered myself to be outrageous enough to try and develop what might have been considered to be possibly an avant-garde form of popular music, which I tried to put across to the public. In England, the public were very stereotyped into... They had no choice but to listen to one radio station, which is the British Broadcasting Corporation, right? Which really limits the material that the kids over there, or the people over there, are going to be able to hear, you know? I picked up a lot of sounds from dingy record stores that used to import some really good music from this very country. And I found that there was far more to the music that I was able to pick up from these little joints than there was being played on the radio. You know, I picked up on the New Orleans rock of Ernie K. Doe and Benny Spellman, Aaron Neville and people like that. At the same time, I wasn't alone, but in the part of the country where I lived, I probably was one of the few people who were into the early chess recordings of Howlin' Wolf and Little Milton and people like that, you know. And I tried my hardest to put it across for $30 a night to an audience who weren't ready for it. The outcome was pretty good considering we were English, you know. And we had a good little band, but the people were the people in the band were a little mundane. They weren't really as much into it as I was. They followed me because I was a front man, you know.
No, what band are you talking about now? This was
This goes back to the Crawling King Snakes.
Did you have any formal training, Robert?
No, I just like to turn people on, and I like to see people get turned on visibly, you know. And I found that the music that I was able to pick up on, which wasn't the popular cliched music at the time, was music that I could express myself in far more, you know. And there was a man who stood in the audience and said to me, listen, you're pretty good, but you really need a good drummer, and I'm the best drummer in the world.
That was Bonzo, right?
Yeah, he's right, too.
We all know that by now.
And that was 11 years ago, yeah.
This is the Night Bird, Allison Steele, for the United States Army Reserve, and our guest today is Led Zeppelin. The unmistakable sound of Led Zeppelin, and I'm really happy to say that I'm backstage with Robert Plant of Led Zeppelin. And something I always wanted to do was to talk to Robert. It's a real thrill, and I'm so glad you invited me. And I've got to ask you a question. Now, I know you've probably had this a million times over the years, but how did you get the name Led Zeppelin?
Well, that was Keith Moon's trip. He was here last night doing his Led Zeppelin. It's, I believe you got a term over here, lead balloon, which means, you know, a lot of hot air, but it doesn't go anywhere, you know.
It means a bomb, really. I mean, you went over like a lead balloon.
Right, a nowhere thing, so it's a good way to start.
In other words, that with a name like that, anything that you did better would be a real surprise?
Right, yeah. As in Swan Song, which is like the last cry. The swan never makes a noise, never makes a sound until it dies.
It sings its final song as it soars into heaven, as the legend goes.
So we thought we'll start the label at the end.
Fantastic. When you started with Led Zeppelin, of course, that first album, did you in those days have any idea or feeling about becoming the supergroup that you are?
No, I really, my limits of perception were far removed from how they are now. I couldn't even envisage America, let alone stardom, you know. There were so many things that I had to see and feel and touch, let alone mass acceptance.
Now that...
And also, I mean, not only mass acceptance, but the way that we've been accepted. We aren't accepted for a physical trip, particularly, or a violent trip, or whatever you like. It's a very, very communicative rapport that we've developed, you know, which really, I mean, you can be popular, but popularity is okay, but if you take it to its extreme limits, and you develop a rapport such as the one that we have now got with people, where we're more or less sitting on their laps, you know? It's that close.
Robert, we were talking a moment ago about the rapport you've developed with the audiences. What's your explanation? I mean, why do you think that you've been able to develop something, I'll go so far as to say no other band has, because I don't know of any other group that can sell 100,000 tickets in 3 hours, and according to your last tour, you broke records set by the Beatles. I mean, what is that little extra something, Robert?
Well, I don't know. You'd have to ask the 100,000 people, but in my eyes, when I walk out there, there's not an ounce of pretense comes from anybody on the stage. It's total, I mean, we're laughing and giggling in serious parts because somebody might have blown half a note somewhere or something like that. And as much as we're capable of producing so much atmosphere and so much sort of one moment tension and one moment elation, you know, the audience or the people or the extension of ourselves they all are aware of the fact that there's not a single time that we are kidding them, that we're putting anything over that isn't 100% ourselves, you know. Whereas I've been to see bands where it's very, very, here's the show, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then goodbye, you know.
I think a lot of it, I think, maybe has to do with the fact that you genuinely have an affection for each other. Do you think that enters into it?
Oh, naturally, we wouldn't be able to play together after this length of time if we didn't feel strongly for each other, you know. There's a corny word that's used a lot called chemistry. A lot of people use it. It's used in articles, and a lot of people always say it, but this is very true, you know, that we possess, when we walk out onto that stage, an affinity, the four of us, one to each other, that I don't see very often anywhere else.
Nor do the rest of us. You, Mama. That's the sound of Led Zeppelin, and I'm backstage with Robert Plant. Zepp is on tour here in New York, and it's been a very momentous occasion. And Robert, I'm really so delighted that you would let me come back and talk to you. One thing that's been on my mind watching you, when you do a tour like this, which is so draining physically and mentally, how does it affect you? How can you be so mellow as you are today, going out and facing crowds the way you've been doing these past few weeks?
Well, that's why I come here, because I enjoy doing it, you know. I mean, I don't need any bread. I live a meagre existence where I live on the Welsh borders in England. I live with gypsy folk who don't have no money, no nothing. Nothing is built around the material.
Serious?
Yeah. Yes.
That's really unusual.
I mean, well, not really. These are the people who turned me on to the folk trip years ago, when I said I used to sit down and play the washboard and blow the harmonica. Well, those people are still around me, and they drive old trucks and collect scrap metal, and they got rings in their ears, and, you know,
great. Well, I would...
neckerchiefs around the neck, and they got no bread, and I got no bread.
Well, you know how we picture you, of course. I mean, Led Zeppelin is the most successful group. We picture you in a house like Gatsby with a white Rolls Royce and servants and, you know, all of that.
I got a 48 Chevy pickup truck, and I bought a 59 Crown Imperial drophead, which is... Actually, I was a bit naughty there, because I spent thousands and thousands of dollars 19 coats of candy apple red paint and a new white electric roof with leopard skin headlining. But the topper, you see, is I drive around in my 59 Crown Imperial, and I live miles away from London in the countryside, right? Who've gone to live there to leave behind the materialistic life to a degree, you know? And my existence at home is really surrounded by a total opposite to the white Rolls Royce and the Gatsby.
So then I guess that's why you can tolerate this being deluged and overrun with hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people for weeks on end and really not have it make a total wreck out of you.
Yeah, well, I like to share what I've got.
What's your reaction to the criticism? I don't know how aware you are of it, but I'm sure every artist has to be. But how do you feel when a writer bum raps the group or doesn't have the best review to give you?
Well, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. And the unfortunate thing is that it can become cliched occasionally for a guy who's got no musical or is incapable of getting off because he reckons that he's too highbrow or he's seen it all, you know. These people are capable of being unable to relate to the majority through the pen exactly what happened. And whether the guy likes it or not, when the critic comes to see us play, we give all. And you can bum rap us all you like, but we give all. And I mean, there's very few bands that give until they collapse, you know. And I mean, this must always be noted, you know. This is noted by the people at the concert, but some of the critics would prefer to make their name by saying, well, I don't really see that much about him, you know.
Robert, the first question in my mind is I know you grew up with Bonzo and that you played together in your early years, but how did you finally get back together to form Led Zeppelin?
Well, I had a band called Robert Plant and the Band of Joy, which involved Bonzo. Once again came up to me and said, listen, you've got a great band, but what you need is a drum. I said, well, I heard that a few years ago, you know. And he came and joined me. It would be about 1966, 67. I had suddenly come to the conclusion that through music we could, all of us, come to better days, you know. It could be a method or a means of communicating positivity, you know. So the Band of Joy went on the road, and although we received quite an amount of acclaim, it was truly, if I dare use the term, underground. It was like, we'd work occasionally. We worked at the Middle Earth and centres of the new musical impetus, you know. There were very few places around England that would have us. But anyway, we carried on working, and although we did become quite a name underneath everything, you know. There was no bread again, and Bonzo said, oh no, you know, I can't keep on playing for no bread. So he started working with a guy called Tim Rose, an American guy who did Morning Dew and who was very good, you know. Bonzo got a bit of a name in England for doing that. And I folded the Band of Joy and started working with a guy called Alexis Corner, who's like the daddy of the blues in England.
I was going to say granddaddy, but you were kinder.
Well, daddy, yeah. Who's a statesman, if you like to call it that, a statesman a diplomat of blues. And I worked a lot in folk clubs and things. It wasn't really my trip to stand there tapping one foot and playing the harmonica, you know. But it was a means to an end, really, because it kept me in the field of music that I liked, you know. But during the days of the Band of Joy, when we were able to play, I met a guy called Terry Reid, who just by chance one night lent me his equipment to sing through, you know. And I never saw him again until I received a telegram from one Peter Grant saying, Terry Reid says you're the best singer in England. Come and try and sing with the Yardbirds. And I thought somebody was, you know, getting me at it, so I ignored the telegram and just lived in destitution and poverty for another 2 days until the next telegram came, and I said, okay, come up and let's have a chat. And I was playing with the band. We were doing, I mean, if Bob Mosley but knew it, we were doing all Moby Grape stuff and everything, you know. And he and Peter and Jimmy Page wandered into this empty college where we were playing and stood back at a distance and went, he's okay. Which left us really to see whether we'd get on, and I ended up at Page's house listening. We just spent a few days listening to sounds, seeing exactly whether in fact we were very closely akin musically, and we found that we were almost joined almost as one in our taste, you know.
That's how Led Zeppelin was born, the fact that you were so close in thinking.
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing I said to him was, he said, well, what do you like? And I said, well, I like everything that's good. And he had a Joan Baez album lying about. I said, there's one track on here that's a traditional song that I've always wanted to do something with. And he said, well, that's funny, there's a track on one of her albums that I really dig too, you know. And it was Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. And we both said, Babe, I'm gonna leave you. And we looked at each other and went, all we need now is a bass player and a drummer.
You know just where to go to get them, right?
Well, there were a few drummers, but once again, it was my turn to say to Bonham this time, listen, I've got a great band. You're the drummer, you know. And he said, oh, no, not again.
Robert, thank you so much for letting me come backstage and talk to you. It's been a highlight of the year for me.
Oh, you're too kind. Thank you.
Robert Plant of Led Zeppelin, and this is Alison Steele, the Night Bird, reminding you that it pays to go to meetings in the Army Reserve.